Sorry about that. It's an announcement that we are now recording. So if you don't want to be on the recording, then just hide your camera. So yeah, in order to hit the government's net zero target of 2050, we're going to have to retrofit around 1 million homes a year over the next 10 years, which is pretty sort of staggering amount. But retrofit isn't necessarily straightforward, particularly when you have older homes. Things like getting insulation right without creating, if you don't do ventilation at the same time, you could create condensation problems. So you really need to know what you're doing. And for the last 8 years or so, since 2013, we've been holding Green Open Homes events and doing information sessions, both in person and more recently online, to inform people about retrofit. But we've often had calls from people or emails from people wanting advice, and we'd love to be able to give advice, but unfortunately Mary and I and the others within MHSG don't have either the time or the expertise to provide that. So we're really delighted that we were able to get some GLA funding, or rather Nadia was, for Future Fit Homes, so that we can actually provide advice through the service that they've been offering to residents in South East London. I'm going to hand over to Nadia in a moment to talk more about the service, but just before I do that, I wanted to launch a quick poll which asks just a couple of questions, which I will launch right now. Just let the last person in before I do that, so they have a chance to answer. There we go. Okay, so you should now see a poll in front of you, if you could vote. Okay, that's most of you voted. Just a few seconds more and then I'll share the results. Okay, so hopefully you can see that now. So we've got a mixture, we've got a few pretty knowledgeable people, which is great. Most of you with some understanding, and a few that hopefully are going to learn more this evening, and possibly more through taking advantage of our advice service. And then in terms of whether you're planning a home retrofit project, nice to see some are already underway, and good to see some future plans as well. Okay, so I'll now hand over to Nadia Smith from Future Fit Homes. Nadia.
Thank you very much, Cara. Super appreciate that. So let's get straight into it. Let me know if you can see my screen, please. Are we good to go?
Yes, we can see that, Nadia.
Lovely. And we will go ahead and go from the beginning. So Future Fit Homes, essentially what we're looking to do is to support people through that process of retrofitting your home, because it's a tough job. It's a big thing to do, and most of us don't really know where to start. I know that within my home, I live in a typical old Victorian 2/3 bed house. And as lovely as it is, it's very energy inefficient, takes a lot of money on heating, and we do get those spots of damp and condensation in some places. So the reason we launched Future Fit Homes was to help people get to a place where you can understand energy and you can support this transition to making London completely zero carbon and reducing our carbon emissions as much as possible. So I'll just run through what we're looking at today. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is why our buildings are a climate problem. Because most of us, when we think about climate change, when we think about sustainability, we think about what we eat, we think about how we get to places, and what kind of energy we use in terms of renewable energy or coal and bits like that. But not many of us think of buildings and the places we live and breathe and do everything in every day as being at the heart of the problem. Then I'll talk a little bit about Future Fit Homes. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the session with two of our advisors, David and Dominic. And yes, if you've got any questions specific to your home, we would love to hear them as well. And as I mentioned, David and Dominic have been giving advice with us for some time, and they are trained in energy efficiency, they're trained in issues to do with insulation, ventilation, etc., etc. So they will definitely be able to give you an informed opinion on these things, whereas me, I'm just managing the project over here, talking about how this all happens, but they make it happen. They're the real part of the solution here. So 22% of our carbon emissions in the UK come from homes. That's almost a quarter. So it's a crazy amount, and it's not something that's thought about at all. Why is it something that's not at the forefront of issues like, you know, air quality is, and like transport and other bits like that? Because it's really hard to tackle. Most of the homes that we'll have by 2050 will still be the homes that we're using today. I think it's about 1/5 of the homes that we will have in 2050 will be new builds. So 1/5 of them will be built to standards where energy efficiency is thought about and taken into account. But we've got to tackle the homes that we live in now. There's a number of different aspects we look at when we talk about retrofitting a home. And you can break it down into 4 areas really, to make it really simple. First one is heating and how we heat our homes, what technology we use, what fuels we use, and what options we have, because it will differ with different options. A lot of you will have heard about heat pumps, and I know that Muswell Hill Sustainability Group have got a webinar coming up on that. Some of us are still using, well, most of us will still be using gas boilers. Some of us will be using other methods like wood burning stoves and bits like that. But what really is the best solution? Well, it depends on how your home is configured, what kind of insulation you've got currently, and other bits like that. So it's not one size fits all isn't really appropriate. But that brings me to the second point. The second point is how our homes hold the heat in, or in most cases, lose the heat. So looking at insulation, looking at ventilation, and looking at how we can make sure our homes are the most comfortable place for us to be. So when we talk about insulation, we're not just talking about keeping the heat in, we're also talking about making sure our homes don't get overheated in the summer. Mind you, this summer is probably not a case we can look at too much overheating yet, and I wish it was, but we'll get there hopefully next few weeks, summer holidays coming up. The third aspect is generating renewable energy. So it's important to remember that we don't need to look at this. We don't need to look at generating our own energy until we've reduced the amount of energy that we've used in the beginning. So we always say the best energy saved is energy that's not used. But when it comes to generating your own energy, generating your own power, you've got multiple options. Most of you will be aware that solar panels, solar PV or photovoltaic, are probably one of the cheapest and one of the easiest ways to generate electrical energy. But there are lots of different solutions for different types of energy that you need, be it heat or electricity. And they're all appropriate for different types of homes again. If you live in a flat, solar panels, probably not the best option for you. And finally, the one that always seems to get left behind, buying energy efficient products. So we've got products that we use in our home every single day, day in, day out. How efficient are they? How much energy are they using? Are our fridges A-rated? Is our washing machine A-rated? Is our boiler very efficient or not very efficient? Because over time, with the use day by day, these things actually do take up a big amount of energy that we consume. And when we're talking about consuming energy, what we're talking about is saving carbon emissions at the end of the day. So this is how you can break it down. This is really the basics of where you need to start when you think about how do I make my home greener. Just focusing on the first and second topics for today. With a lot of our homes, and I'm talking about homes that are typical of the sort of Muswell Hill, Highgate area, we're going to be looking at what we call the fabric efficiency of the home. So we're talking about mainly types of insulation, going here really from easiest to probably, maybe not easiest to hardest, but these are the different options that you've got for insulation. Roof and loft insulation, you'll probably all know, is the easiest and the cheapest and the quickest win. But that means a lot of us have already done it. So if you've already done it, what are your options after that? Well, you've got either cavity wall or solid wall insulation, dependent on how old your building is and how it was built. And for those, if you've got solid wall insulation, you've got some different options. So if you live in a conservation area, you might not be able to install it on the outside of your house, external wall insulation. You might have to look at internal wall insulation instead. So there's lots of different constraints to consider here. Floor insulation, another one that not many people think about, because why is that? Well, it's a bit of a nightmare to install. You don't want to be taking up your floors, you don't want to be ripping everything up. But if you're thinking about putting a new kitchen in and you're taking everything out of your kitchen, that is the time to plan it out and to think about, actually, if I'm putting a new kitchen in, what can I do about the energy efficiency of my home at the same time? And that's the time to think about starting to put floor insulation in. Or similar, if you're redoing bathrooms, if you're redoing different rooms, it's always good to try and join up the different bits of work that you're doing on your home and think about energy efficiency and improving how green your home is at the same time as improving how it looks and how it feels. And finally, windows and draft proofing. Draft proofing, again, one of the things that's not talked about too often, but this can be a really quick win as well. I know that for me, under my stairs, I've got an area where I can constantly feel the draft coming in. So just putting a little bit of draft proofing around the door under the stairs is really cheap. It's a DIY fix, but it makes a big difference in terms of how hot my home stays and how I can keep the cold out from under the stairs there. So once you've had a think about that, and I can see that a lot of you have started to think about these different options because a lot of you have already started your retrofit, where do you go for advice? We found that in London, people were either going to installers and builders to get advice, but that advice wasn't always trustworthy, it wasn't always accurate, or they were going to get an EPC done or going to specific consultants for advice, which specific consultants can be very expensive. Getting an EPC done gives you a really good first picture, but it might not be specifically tailored enough to your home. It might not help you understand in detail how you can plan different renovations at different periods of time, despite it being a really good start and a really good summary of your home. So we set up the Future Fit Homes programme really to offer tailored, trustworthy and impartial advice. We've got a team of trained advisors. David and Dominic are two of those. We've also got a guy called Tristan, who is very expert and is a qualified retrofit coordinator as well. Some of you might have heard that term if you've been sort of in the industry for a while, but it just means he can manage different contractors to help your retrofit go a bit more smoothly. And we work alongside an organisation called Retrofit Works Cooperative, who are a co-op of installers who are vetted, trusted, and very good at what they do in terms of energy efficiency to get bigger projects installed to a high standard and to be installed as smoothly and without any issues, any hiccups, bits like that, as smoothly as possible. And I'll talk a little bit more about Retrofit Works later, but they are a social enterprise just like we are. Being a social enterprise, all of the work that we do, any profits that we make, go back into alleviating fuel poverty and carbon emissions as well across South East London. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the different services that we offer. And there are a number of things that you can do when you come to retrofit your home. But the first one we always recommend is just come and have a chat with us. So you can speak to David or Dominic or Tristan on a free half-hour phone call. And we just use this phone call to really scope out exactly what you're looking to do, understand what it is that's important to you. Is it just carbon emissions? Is it carbon emissions and you've allocated a specific budget to this? Is it the comfort in your home? Bits like that. And to understand what we think it would be best for you to do going forwards. After that free half-hour phone call, one of the things we might advise that you have is just some more one-to-one advice. So this is usually for people that probably have already started on their retrofit, but what they want to do is they have specific questions that they want to ask, or they've gone out and got quotes from contractors and they want some feedback on those quotes. So we charge this at £59 per hour. It's really flexible. We can do it in your home or we can do it remotely if you just want to send us some documents in, and we'll look at, for example, all the different quotes that you've got and advise you on what to look out for and what's going well, what's been proposed that is good, and what you might need to ask for a bit more information on in terms of contractors. Or if it's a specific issue within your home, we can come and have a look at it and give you some advice on how to solve that. We have also recently launched a home report. This is great for if you really don't know where to start. Maybe you've just bought a house, or maybe you are looking to sell your house and you want to do some upgrades before you sell it, to give you a rounded picture about what the best steps for you would be going forward. So we'll come in and we'll take some notes on what is in your home currently, take some photos, have a bit of a poke around, and then we'll go back and write a full report for you on what's installed, so you've got that on record for future, but also what we would recommend based on your budget and what you're interested in. So it is really tailored as well. Something we run through the winter is thermal imaging, and I'm afraid it is too warm for this now, because we do need to have a 10-degree difference between the inside and the outside of the house when we do thermal imaging surveys. But I thought I would mention it because this is a really practical way to get engaged with what your home looks like in terms of energy efficiency. So our thermal imaging surveys, we go around the home with a camera, and one of our advisors talks through what you're seeing on the camera live with you to explain where you've got specific areas where perhaps the insulation hasn't been installed very well previously. Perhaps you've got little gaps between your windows and the edges of the wall where you're losing a lot of heat from, and bits like that. So those will be back on in the winter, hopefully. But yes, they're off for the summer now on summer break, the thermal imaging surveys. We also do EPCs or energy performance certificates. Out of interest, who knows what an EPC is and who hasn't heard of one before? Just let us know in the chat. So an energy performance certificate, essentially what it does is it takes a number of measures within your home and it gives them a rating, which is a specific number rating. Say, for example, if you've got solar panels, you'll get a number of ratings for the solar panels. If you've got cavity wall insulation, you'll get a number of points for the cavity wall insulation. And then it will tally up all of those points and it will rate your house on its energy efficiency and on its carbon emissions from A to G, I believe. This one's an important one for landlords, and it's an important one for anyone who is about to sell their house or who's recently bought their house, because legally you need to have an EPC for any of those situations. So once you get your rating from A to G, A being very energy efficient and G being quite terrible, you can also look at a few recommendations at the end, which are relatively generic recommendations, but obviously they're based on what's been installed in your home. And it gives you some guidance as to the cost as well and how much you would save over a certain amount of time on these. And then the last key aspect of our services is retrofit coordination. So who has heard of retrofit coordination before? Who knows what retrofit coordination is? And actually, who has heard the term retrofit? Because this is a word that we band around as well, but I know that a lot of people I've met don't really know what retrofit means to them. But when we talk about retrofit, we're talking about going back into something that's already built and making it more efficient. So basically home improvement. Retrofit coordination is where you have an advisor who can specifically manage your whole project for you. So if you're doing a lot of work to your house, and when I say a lot of work, we tend to recommend this route for people that are having work done that costs over £10,000. So you might have lots of little bits of different areas of work that you want to coordinate and put them all together and make sure that they're all done to a high standard in the right order. You can actually be sort of referred to an organisation that we work with who will not only get you some quotes from builders and find you a builder for all of that work who's qualified and who's kind of expert in doing all of those different pieces of work, but one person from our team will also manage the project for you. So you won't need to be constantly running after builders, running after contractors, trying to understand what they're doing, who's coming when. You'll have someone qualified to manage that process and make it as easy as possible for you. And finally, one of the last things, which is free, and I'm always glad to mention the free stuff that we do, is we host lots of webinars, and we also have a blog on our website where we give out advice on different topics. So one of the recent blogs I've put on is about solar panels and what you need to look at before you go ahead and get solar panels. We've previously hosted webinars and actually a 4-week course on deep energy efficiency retrofit and installation. So if you're interested to get into the details of those topics, please feel free to go and check them out on our website. But what do all of these services mean for you specifically as the customer? What's it going to look like? Well, you might come across us like you have done today through a webinar, which we would think about as sort of the initial engagement. And then you might think, actually, yeah, I would like to find out a bit more about this. I would like to get started with the work on my home, or I would like to get some advice on it. And you can come for a basic review with us. This is where we have our free half-hour call and our advisors talk through and try and understand what exactly your needs are and give you some little gems of advice to start off with before you come back for a bit more info. Then you have, we split projects into two different areas. The first area, which I've called DIY and Kickstart, are people that have already started to do work on their home, people that know exactly what it is they want to do and have little bits of work that they want to do. When I say little, I don't mean to like tiny, but it could be anything. From, you know, just putting up draft proofing to actually getting builders in and getting walls insulated and bits like that. But for this side of the work, you can come to us for hourly advice, you can come to us for a home report or bits like that, and we'll help you based on whatever your needs are, one-to-one. Whereas there are other people who are looking to go through a deep retrofit, and I think James is going to talk about his deep retrofit in a little bit as well, so it'll be good to hear his experience of that. But when we talk about deep retrofit, we really talk about someone that is looking to look at all the different aspects of their home in one go, set out sort of a long-term plan, a project that might take a few months to finish. And usually the spend is going to be over £10,000 on this project as a whole. And what we would recommend is that you get a project manager for it. So you get someone who we would call a retrofit coordinator, and we have retrofit coordinators within our team, and they'll help you manage that project like I was talking about earlier. So you don't have to deal with lots of different contractors in different places. But what we hope you'll get out of that is that you are empowered to future fit your own home, and you can prepare, you can understand, and you can engage with how you use energy and your own carbon emissions, and you can go on and teach other people, especially your neighbours, because they've got similar houses to you, how they can do this on their own homes as well, and help London go completely zero carbon. So this is our website. Feel free to come and check us out, futurefithomes.org. You can also type in futurefithomes.co.uk and you will be taken to the same place. Thankfully, we've been doing okay on the Google reviews, and we've got all 5 stars so far. So some really good feedback. But what can you do next? Well, give us a call. You can book a free call with us through our website if you know what time you want to have your free call, or you can drop me an email on nadia@celsey.org.uk and we'll get that organised for you. Think about a deep retrofit for your home. Think about making a plan of the different steps that you need to take to make your home really energy efficient, because it is a big project. It can be a mammoth task, but once you break it down into smaller tasks, it will make it a lot easier. And you can check out the blog on our website for more advice about that. Or you can visit Muswell Hill Sustainability Group's website and watch some of their old events and webinars. Our website also has some of our old events and webinars on there. And I believe Cara mentioned that you have got a new webinar coming up as well. So look out for that one in future. But I will leave it there for now. Thank you all for listening and watching. And I'm going to pass back to Cara.
Thank you very much, Nadia. Let's remove the spotlight there. Great. So I just wanted, just before I hand over to James, I just wanted to answer one of the questions, which was how come South East London's Future Fit is offering services in North London? We'll come back to the other questions later. So basically that is thanks to the GLA and Community Energy London. And really what the GLA wants to do is make sure that the expertise from other community energy groups is shared. And Celsey is I would say one of the leading community energy groups across London. They've been going for several years. They've done a lot of work on energy efficiency, fuel poverty, and able to pay. And they really are good at this stuff. And what we wanted to do was to be able to offer that service, given it was all up and running, rather than us start up something ourselves. We wanted to offer that service to people living locally here. So that's why, happy to say a bit more about that if necessary, but that's a quick intro. So I am going to hand over now to James. And James is a Muswell Hill Sustainability Group member, but he's actually in Colombia right now. That's the wonderfulness of Zoom. And he can explain a bit himself, but basically he did a deep retrofit of property in Muswell Hill, and which is now being rented. So I'm going to be sharing a video, and James is going to be telling me to pause and start again as he talks. So if you can just bear with me and just make sure that I get to the right place on the video. So just bear with me one moment.
Cara, shall I give a very brief introduction?
Yes, if you could, that would be great.
I start that now?
Yes.
So I'm a property developer and a landlord full-time, and my wife is a child psychotherapist. And for about 10 years, we've been running environmental workshops on a voluntary basis to primary schools all over North London, basically. And so we bought our house in Muswell Hill in 2012, and we really understand how important it is to have sustainable homes. So we wanted to do everything to our house to make it as energy efficient as we possibly could. And the energy EPC rating went from a G to 3 points below an A by the time we finished. So we have a video tour of the house, and what I want to do is explain to you room by room what we did.
Tell me when to stop, James.
Yeah, well, let's enter the house first.
Yeah.
Actually, it'd be interesting from the outside. Actually, let's keep going a bit. Let's get to the front door. Okay, can you stop there for a sec?
Yep.
If you look at our house, and if you look at the house next door, the windows look exactly the same. The style, the design, the white, the sort of the bits at the top of the windows, they're exactly the same. And what there was before, there was sort of these single glazed windows that was very drafty and very cold in the winter. So we arranged for a company to make double glazed sash windows, which look identical to all the other houses on the streets. So you wouldn't really know they've been changed. So they're double glazed sash windows that are sort of matching the Edwardian style of the house. And then if you see the front door, what we did there was we secondary glazed it from the inside, because again, it was letting all the cold air through that glass. Right, should we enter, Cara, now?
Yep.
Right, can you stop there for a sec? So one of the draftiest things in a house are those fireplaces. They let a huge amount of cold air in from up top. And you can get these, there are various different products you can buy specifically to block the cold air coming in from outside. We had 6 fireplaces in the house, and so 5 of them we blocked because we weren't using them. And it was just this one in the lounge that we left open. I think it's called a balloon, I believe, an air balloon, I think it's called, that you put up inside in the fireplace. So that floor you can see was the original floor. And what we did was we lifted it up and we put below it, we put floor insulation. If you can see right by the windows at the top, you can see something that looks a bit like an air brick. Because I'll explain in a minute, but basically we put wall insulation around the whole house. Effectively what it does, it puts a plastic bag around the house to keep the heat in. The problem is what that does, it also keeps the moisture in. And by keeping the moisture in, the moisture will sit on the walls and turn to mold, which we didn't want. So we wanted to find a way to sort of let the moisture out, but keep the warm air in. So what you see up there is, it's called a pacifier. And we have one on the front and the back of each floor of the house all the way up. And it's got sheep's wool in the middle. So it does that function basically. The house is a terraced house. So what we did was we put wall insulation on the walls that face the front and the walls that face the back only. And it's internal. So there's 10 centimeters of internal wall insulation that's using natural breathable materials. Okay, Cara, can you continue? Can you stop for a sec? Can you stop, Cara? So this was we actually put in an extension here. The kitchen, that back part of the kitchen is new. And we put cavity wall insulation there. If I could explain what it is, basically you have sort of two walls near each other, and in the middle, you put the insulation, the wall insulation inside. Right, can you carry on? But can you stop for a sec, Cara? So we've got the most energy efficient kitchen appliances we could, and also we try not to use the dryer, and we use that that line there to dry some of our clothes, particularly in the spring, summer, autumn months. You can carry on now. Thank you. Can you just stop for one sec? The lighting, we changed all the lighting for low energy lighting, even though some of it looks original, but it's all been replaced. So but what we did was we tried to restore all the original features of the house. It's about 100 years old, Edwardian style house, but make it as eco-friendly as we possibly could. I mean, we did absolutely everything, basically. Keep going, Cara. Thank you. Can you just stop for one sec? Can you stop for one sec? In the bathrooms generate a lot of steam. And again, it's very important to let all that steam out so it doesn't produce condensation and mold in the property. And what we put in all the bathrooms is, it's called a humidistat. And basically it stays on the whole time. It's not linked to a light switch or any other kind of switch. Whenever it detects steam, it just removes it automatically. Okay, keep going now, Cara, thank you. Can you stop for a sec? So that's the top floor of the house, and there was a small loft above the ceiling. And as was mentioned before by Nadia, we just very simply put insulation in the loft. Very simple, very, very inexpensive. Can be done at any time. Across the whole loft, about 10 centimeters of sheepswool insulation. Can you carry on now? Thank you. Right. Can you stop for a sec, Cara? Oh, yeah, can you just stop there? So what we did here was we put in roof insulation inside, internal roof insulation. Okay, keep going. Can you stop? Stop there for a sec. So we fitted PV panels on the roof, and the PV panels, they produce electricity when there's light. So we used all the kitchen appliances only when it was in the light hours. And if the panels produce more electricity than we're actually using, we bought an extra device which basically produces free hot water for us as well. Can you carry on, Cara? Yeah, that's it. We're done.
Okay. Thank you very much, James. And please do mute if you're not speaking, but I'm sure there'll be questions. That was a very quick overview of what can be done in a really deep retrofit. Actually, just a quick question from me, James. Do you have a boiler or do you have a heat pump?
We bought a very, very, very efficient boiler. But if I were to do that again, another job like that, I would probably install a ground source heat pump with some top up from some sort of electric heating device.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we've had a number of questions that have come through, so we'll go through these. Okay, so I will direct these to different people that I decide, but do David or Dominic or Nadia or James just notify me if you want to answer, or just step in. So first question, what are the advantages and disadvantages of solar PV versus solar thermal panels in terms of both efficiency and ease of installation? So David, do you want to have a go at answering that? David, did you hear that?
I did, and it's not an area of expertise that I have. I would have to revert and get back to you on that one.
Okay, Nadia, do you want to pick that up? Otherwise, probably I imagine James could also do that.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. So in terms of solar PV versus solar thermal is not huge in the UK. There's not too many people that install it. It's not taken as frequently, probably partly because there wasn't a subsidy for it, the way there was a subsidy for solar PV. But what they do is they produce two completely different types of energy. So solar thermal is just hot water, and solar PV is just electricity. What James has got installed, I think, is a solar diverter. Is that right, James? So it takes from his solar PV, so electrical energy, and it turns it into hot water. I think that's a better option because most of us probably use, I think you're on mute, James.
Called an immersion heater.
With an immersion heater. Got it. Yeah, so I think solar PV is a better option for most people because of the amount of electricity we use within our homes. Also, in the UK, solar thermal isn't as efficient as it is in other countries. Solar thermal isn't by no means going to be able to cover all of your heating needs in the UK. It's just not possible. What it will do is it will reduce the amount of work that your boiler has to do in the summer. Whereas solar PV, like James mentioned, it works essentially off of light. It doesn't need to be extremely sunny outside for the solar panels to work. It just needs to be, there needs to be certain levels of light outside. So in terms of costs as well, the costs of solar PV have come down quite rapidly. It's a very well understood technology. And you can pair it with a battery, which is useful for future because a lot of us will also move on to start switching maybe our heating to electric. We might start buying electric cars and charging our electric cars from our solar panels as well. So I would say solar PV is probably a much more versatile renewable energy than solar thermal is, and that's why I would recommend it more.
Thank you very much. Next question. Oh, Dominic, did you want to add something? If you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. I'd just like to add that the problem that we've had with PV in recent years is that in the past there used to be a thing called the feed-in tariff, which made it much more economical to do the upfront costs, because obviously it's quite expensive, all the installation. And your payback period with the feed-in tariff, which was basically a government sponsored dividend for producing renewable electricity. So you would, in the past, I think when it first started, you would get paid, I think it was 90 pence per kilowatt that you produced. But unfortunately, that got slashed in half, and then eventually it's been taken away altogether now for domestic buildings. So that has had a big effect on the viability of installing PV. Obviously, the government are talking a lot at the moment about putting through some new legislation, and that might all change. But just in terms of cost, you used to be able to recoup the cost of solar PV a lot quicker than you would now. So I just I'd add that. With the solar thermal as well, it's also quite a lot down to occupants user. So if you've got a big family that uses, because we're talking about hot water, if you use a lot of hot water, then solar thermal could be a good option. But you also have to bear in mind that you need a big cylinder, so you need space. If you're limited for space, then solar thermal is not really an option.
Thank you very much, Dominic. So we've got another question about wood burning stoves. Are they a complete no-no? So I don't know whether Nadia or Dominic or David, you want to pick that up?
Yeah, I think with wood burning stoves, it seems to have been a complete turnaround recently. They were really promoted about 10 years ago, you know, as a sort of renewable source, low carbon. But I think it's been in the news in the last sort of month or so that they're actually, you know, they're pumping out quite a lot of CO2, and it's kind of gone a bit. A lot of people are a bit upset that, you know, they've sort of installed, you know, wood-fired burners, and it's turned out to be not a particularly good option.
Yeah, I would agree with Dominic on that one. Wood burning stoves, as nice and fashionable as they are, cause a real problem in terms of air quality within our communities, and quite often it tends to be the people that are a bit more sort of have the financial ability to have wood burning stoves and to have them as extras in their homes as well. So it's mostly not the main source of heating for people, but the air quality can affect. I know that in southeast London we've got quite a lot of more expensive areas of housing right next to council estates, and right next to areas where a lot of kids are walking to school and bits like that. So it's something that has a negative impact on our communities in terms of air quality. So I would have to say it's a no-no from me. But maybe David has got some comments on what better options are in terms of heating.
Yeah, I would agree with Nadia. They're not the best option for air quality, and there are other options available, but it depends on, you know, the property and the circumstances within the property and the usage and the occupancy.
Okay, thank you very much. So a question for James from Sarah. Were you aiming for any level of air tightness?
Well, basically, the objective was to have the lowest possible heating and electricity bills we could, and do everything we can to make that happen. That was our objective. So the heating bills went down from £2,500 to £900, for example.
Thank you. And question from Annabelle again to you, James. Did you have to remove original features when doing the internal wall insulation, and does that affect how the windows look?
Yes, we had to remove everything to do that. We had to remove all the, I'm not sure how much you could really see on the video, but there was we have lots of cornicing and all sorts of things in the ceiling. All of that had to come down. And the architraves around the floor had to come away. Some of that broke, but luckily in Muswell Hill there are lots of shops, artisan shops, that sell replicas of all these things, so you can buy it all very easily. So everything that was on the ceiling is actually new but looks old. So yes, some of those things had to all come down, and some broke and some had to be replaced. Yes.
Okay, and a question from Brian. Is it wasteful to use electricity for direct heating, given that the country does not have a surplus of sustainably sourced electricity? James or Nadia, you might want to comment on that.
I would say, is it wasteful to use electricity for direct heating? I wouldn't say it's wasteful. Direct electric heating has its uses. It's not the most efficient way to heat a big space. So when you use direct electric heating, you tend to want to have a space that's already well insulated and a relatively small space. In terms of the UK actually sourcing its energy, It's much easier for the UK to get electricity from renewable sources than it is to get heat from renewable sources. So the gas that we use is relatively hard to reduce our reliance on that gas, whereas when we're talking about sourcing electricity, we've got a few ways we can source it. We've hit record highs on electricity generation from wind turbines onshore and offshore. We've hit record highs on electricity from solar panels. We've also just made some agreements with the EU about interconnectors, so importing electricity from other countries that do have more renewable energy capacity than us, like Norway. And it's, yeah, overall, it's easier for us to decarbonize electricity than it is for us to decarbonize anything else. Hence why we're switching to electric vehicles rather than looking at, you know, more green petrol and petrol alternatives. And yeah, I would say it's not a waste, but maybe other people have different opinions on that one.
Could I also add to that we've gone from pretty much about 5% renewable from wind, you know, from large scale wind farms about 10 or 15 years ago to up to about 30 or 40%. And the future is going to be all heating is going to be electric, because fossil fuels are going to be phased out. So I'd say it's not, you know, it's not a waste of using electric. We just have to make sure that we get to a much higher percentage of wind farms providing that electricity.
Yeah, and also that we make our homes as efficient as possible, so you minimise the amount of electricity used, which is a key point. Annabelle raises
one more thing, Cara. Can I just have one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
The other thing that's very important, which we can all do straight away, is try and find a electricity provider that generates 100% of the electricity from renewable sources. And the two of the biggest suppliers are called Ecotricity and Good Energy. There probably are others, but that's a very important thing that we can all do sort of straight away. The problem is some electricity providers say they produce their electricity from renewable energy, but they don't, unfortunately. But those two actually do.
Thanks very much, James. Thank you. So yeah, another question from Annabelle, very good one, which is if everyone replaces windows, boilers, etc., how will this affect landfill? So Nadia or James, do you want to have a go at answering that? Or either Dominic or David?
Really good question. Really, really good point. Firstly, recycle where you can. I know that James, you mentioned you switched all of your lights to LED lights, right? Did you note where you were putting your old lights? Did you make sure that they were disposed of safely and were recycled? I know he did, by that look on his face.
Well, I think so. I mean, the builder did all that, but I presume he did. I hope he did, because he should have done.
Yeah. So with quite a few technologies, there's a lot that you can do in terms of recycling. Having said that, we would never recommend that someone who's just gotten a new gas boiler 3 or 4 years ago replaces their gas boiler. Definitely not. That gas boiler has life in it. It has what we call embedded carbon. So any recommendations that we would make are always taking into account what you've had installed, what lifespan they've got left in them. And it's always going to be a better option for you to fix and replace things that don't have much of a life left in them, and to take into account what life they do have left in them as well. So really good point. Definitely something to look at and something to consider. But yeah, it's not always a quick fix, replace your boiler, replace this, replace that. No, do think about how long they've got left to survive, and what embedded or like embodied carbon they have in them as well.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. We're now at just gone 8:30. So we're going to finish up there, but just to say, if you want to find out more, and I hope that you are interested in using the Future Fit Home service, details on our website, Muswell Hill Sustainability Group, and also at the Future Fit Homes website directly. With that, we'll end. But just before we do, I will mention we are doing a session on heat pumps on Monday, the 14th of June. That is co-hosted with Haringey Sustainable Living Group, and so we'll be sending out details of that as well. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Cara. Bye bye.